Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Wednesday's edition of Alaska Weather. 15th day of December 2021, 10 more days till Christmas. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphics showing blizzard warning for the western Arctic coast out until 3 p.m. Thursday. That's for winds gusting to 50 miles an hour and blowing snow, reducing visibility is less than a quarter mile at times, along with wind chills anywhere from 40 to 65 below zero. And then also a blizzard warning out St. Lawrence Island, Bering Strait coast. That's out till midnight tonight. And that's for winds gusting 65 miles an hour, creating whiteout conditions in areas. And that's out until midnight tonight. And winds drop off, conditions improve after midnight and into tomorrow morning. And then winter weather advisories out for the central eastern Arctic coast and eastern North Slope there, northeastern Brooks Range. And that's out tonight, or late tonight through tomorrow. And for blowing snow and winds gusting 40 miles an hour. And visibility is down to half mile or less at times, wind chills 50 degrees below zero. And a winter weather advisory out, or actually that's a wind chill advisory out for the Eagle to Northway area, 40-mile country, Upper Tanana Valley, Deltona Flats area. That's for wind chills to 50 degrees below zero. And then winter storm warnings out from the Noatak Valley Northwest coast, winter weather advisory in the yellow shaded area there for all of the western interior, Bristol Bay right up to the northwest coast. And that's tonight through tomorrow. And next frame showing all of Bristol Bay there, including Nunivak Island area, and that's for snow, blowing snow 2 to 4 inches, or some areas may see more, others less, but snow it blows around with winds gusting 30 to 50 miles an hour, getting down to about that quarter mile visibility range at times, not as bad as what's in the warning areas. And from there, taking a look at satellite imagery, low pressure, another low there moving eastward across the northern Bering Sea west of St. Matthew Island, pushing a front eastward, and another influx of moisture across all the western interior areas. The front still back off the coast, off the west coast, just now crossing St. Lawrence Island and pushing in toward Nunivak Island. And Cirrus spreading over into the central interior now, thickening up over south central Alaska, Susitna Valley, and just west of Fairbanks there. But clear and cold temperatures, North Slope, all the way down through the central and eastern interior areas into the south central Alaska area. And the Panhandle, a dry day there, gusty winds in the north, but temperatures generally below freezing. A few passing clouds, mid and high level clouds over the northern areas, and then moisture pulling off to the southeast there with basically clear skies. Temperatures, most areas there staying below freezing the entire day, well below freezing in the north. And a lot of showers out over the Aleutians. Rain showers are in the case, kind of a dry day for Unalaska. Temperatures in the lower to mid 40s there at Dutch Harbor in Unalaska, with maybe some breaks in the overcast. Same thing for the Pribilofs. They had some breaks, and in fact, one ob had clear skies, but that'll be short-lived. More clouds just to your west, kind of a band there, will be moving in with rain or snow showers. And the whole pattern shifting eastward gradually, so that's going to pull that moisture across all of interior Alaska later tonight and into tomorrow for warmer temperatures and at least a chance of snow just about anywhere over mainland Alaska, heaviest in the west and southwest, and lighter amounts up to the off to the east. But on the chart today, you can see the tightening gradient, Arctic high there, pulling off into the Northwest Territories, or into just east of the border there, 1,040 millibars, and then the low center drifting towards St. Matthew Island, and that puts a squeeze on the pressure gradient there, and we've got the winds gusting as high as 40 miles an hour at Point Lay. Had wind chill temperatures in the western Arctic coast today, anywhere from 60 to 70 below with those winds. And Kotzebue, peak wind gusts just under 50 miles an hour. Nome, though, had 51 miles an hour with some snow and blowing snow there. Unalakleet even stronger, 56 miles an hour. And the top wind gust was at Cape Neuenam, 63 miles an hour. from the east-southeast, one of the normally windier areas, and Cold Bay about 54 miles an hour. And for tonight, everything shifts eastward. Warmer temperatures and increasing clouds. Breezy conditions pushing inland. Won't be that strong on the winds, but winds diminish back to the west, especially behind the front. You can see the gradient really slackening off. Stays a little breezy St. Lawrence Island, but you'll lose the 65-mile-an-hour wind gusts as that low weakens and continues to move east-northeastward. And next system pushing in toward the western Aleutians tonight will deepen tomorrow just north of Chimie-Attu with storm force winds around that low center, tight enough gradient, gales in advance of the front, gale force winds, Adak and Atka, rain, possibly heavy at times, temperatures in the mid-40s, and kind of a dry day, weak high pressure moving over the eastern Aleutian areas. There will be another dry day. Few showers possible for the Pribilof Islands, low pressure east of Kodiak Island, chance of rain or snow there, snow showers probably, especially with any elevation at all. Chance of snow anywhere over interior Alaska, more of a flurry condition over toward the border, but could be a few inches back to the west. And then on Friday, finally some moisture pushes into the southeast coast and another round of snow and blowing snow into the western interior. Lows state low this morning, Umiat Airfield minus 49, state high on Alaska 43 above. Lows tonight minus 20s, Copper River Basin, otherwise a little below zero south central Alaska, teens Bristol Bay. Near zero northern Panhandle, lower 20s to the south. Highs tomorrow warmer. Copper River Basin holding a little below zero, otherwise teens to lower 20s, mid-30s Kodiak Island, teens to near 30 for the Panhandle. Stays chilly for the southeast coast through Friday morning. And taking a look at the highs, near 40 for Kodiak, upper 30s, 20s south central Alaska, above zero even for the Copper River Basin.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic for Thursday morning. IFR pushing into the western interior, covering the northern Bering Sea down to St. Matthew Island, Nunivak Island. Marginal VFR for the Pribilofs to the western Alaska Peninsula. Some VFR breaking out over the eastern central Aleutians. Next batch of IFR shoving into the Chimie-Attu area late tonight. VFR, eastern interior, northern Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, right up to most of the north slope in the Arctic coast. Panhandle, VFR, some marginal VFR showing up on the south coast. And for the day, Thursday, VFR for the southeast coast there. Again, marginal VFR now on the central coast. Not much of a factor there. IFR, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula, pushing into Cook Inlet, into the western Susitna Valley, northern Susitna Valley, up to the Alaska Range. And the Fairbanks area, Nenana, eastward, all VFR. Widespread IFR from the western Arctic coast, southward to Bristol Bay and to St. Lawrence Island, becoming marginal for Nunivak Island. Possible VFR showing up for the Pribilofs, definitely for Atka, Unalaska, Unmac Island, western Alaska Peninsula. And then a band of IFR there into the west central Aleutians, Kiskamchik Island. Friday morning, that narrow band moves eastward to Atka and to St. Paul. Otherwise, in northern Bering Sea, pretty much IFR, western central interior of the state, IFR. Some marginal VFR, central Brooks Range, otherwise now even the Arctic coast there, IFR, except over toward Kaktovik, Barter Island area. And most of the interior now is marginal or IFR, heaviest on the central and eastern part of the state. Still possible VFR, though, 40-mile country, but IFR for the North Gulf Coast, Knik Arm, Manooska Valley, northern Kenai Peninsula to the north coast of the Panhandle. And for the afternoon, IFR, all of the southeast coast. VFR now, south central Alaska. Some marginal VFR, Susitna Valley and northern Cook Inlet. Otherwise, areas of VFR with scattered IFR over the southeast interior. But a lot of IFR out over the western part of the state again, Arctic coast, and increasing VFR, Aleutians, and the central Bering Sea, marginal for the Pribilofs. For passes, Anatuvik, IFR, better conditions out the north entrance to the north slope. Same thing for Adigan with the basic southerly flow. And for western Alaska Range, Lake Clark, Merrill, IFR, IFR for Rainy. Windy IFR, better conditions out the north entrance, marginal VFR there, maybe even possible VFR. Isabel, I'll go VFR in the north entrance or on the north side there, IFR. South entrance through the pass. Mentasta stays VFR. Tanita, IFR, better conditions west. And Portage, IFR, possible low IFR eastern entrance. And for Chilkoot and White, another day of VFR. And for the freezing level surface, north of the Pribilofs to about St. Matthew Island, 2,000 feet though south of the Aleutians, in fact 2,000 feet south of, well south of all of the state. And for icing, areas of isolated moderate rime or mixed icing here, pretty widespread with the southwest flow and the milder air pushing into the central western part of the state, down into the Gulf of Alaska, North Gulf Coast, north coast of the Panhandle. Another batch of icing with that next front pushing into the western and central Aleutians to about Adak. And the jet stream, that area getting pushed by 110 knot southwest jet there, coming up over a flat ridge, 100 knots in the central bearing. Otherwise, notice the south-southwest flow, 50 to 60 knots here over interior Alaska. That means warmer temperatures. And for 9,000 feet, southwest 25 to 40 knots through the interior, westerlies, northern Bering Sea, and then 70 knot winds with that next system out over the western Aleutians. And at 3,000 feet, excuse me, 50 to 70 knot winds around that low in the western Bering Sea or southwest Bering Sea there, strongest ahead of the front, 70 to 80 knots. West 40 knots south of St. Lawrence Island, 45 knots south-southeasterlies there across the Kobuk, Selawik Valley areas, as well as the central Arctic coast. And the North Gulf Coast looking at east-southeast, kind of a narrow band there up to 45 knots. Kind of the terrain putting a squeeze on the atmosphere there, enhancing the winds a little bit. Otherwise pretty light for the Panhandle and the eastern interior. Turbulence-wise, occasional moderate chop, Adak, Atka, Shimei at 2, otherwise not too bad over the state. Maybe the eastern interior, northern Panhandle, still some mechanical turbulence.
When I first started working here in the early 90s, this is where the glacier was. I mean, where we're walking right now would have been a pile of gravel that had been pushed up by the glacier, and then we would have had 100 to 200 foot high cliffs of ice right here. And as you can see, that's changed quite a bit. And if you look at that in 2 dimensions, you can sort of see the terminus used to be here, now it's back there. That gives you one measure. What that kind of 2-dimensional look doesn't show is how much mass has been lost, that the glacier has just sort of deflated. These 200-foot cliffs of ice have disappeared and pulled back to this gentle sloping glacier you see now.
When I was working in Kenai Fjords National Park, I used the topographic maps to navigate where I was, and I realized that the mapping of the glaciers was really off. The glaciers had receded a lot. There were new rivers and lakes that were establishing where the ice used to be or should have been according to the maps. And so then I did a study on this and found out that we had a 5% loss of glacier ice mass in the Kenai Fjords area between 1950 and 1985. Big change.
You know, one of the most compelling things we do, though, to document glacier change is simply take photographs. We've had repeat photography projects here at the park. They may not give you the most accurate data in terms of how much mass or real specific measurements, but what they do give you is a visual representation that can't be argued with. I mean, it really requires no interpretation.
Understanding what's happening, understanding these processes, and possibly being able to predict what's going to happen in the future is the best that we can do, and that requires science and research.
There's considerable research on climate change in Alaska. The most significant, I would say right now, is the Natural Resources Inventory and Monitoring Program, which is looking at change across a wide variety of vital signs or indicators.
Kenai Fjords National Park is actually a pretty good representation of what's going on globally with regards to glacier ice retreat. There have been studies showing that mountain glaciers are retreating all over the planet. There are probably well over 90% of the glaciers are in retreat status. There are a few that are advancing and some are holding their terminus point. But at Kenai Fjords, the tidewater glaciers are retreating more dramatically, but even the land-based glaciers in the terminus positions are retreating. It's pretty common for all the mountain glaciers. The big mountain glaciers in Wrangell St. Elias National Park, they're mostly in retreat too. We're really entering an interesting phase where what we call the cryosphere, the ice on the planet, is melting.
You know, in the more immediate past, it's clear that since the Pleistocene, glaciers have been retreating. So the idea that glaciers retreat is nothing, is no revelation. They've been retreating from across North America for the last 10,000 years. What appears to have changed and what has people's attention is the rate at which they're retreating. In the case of Exit Glacier, you know, we have scientists who've been looking at it. We have evidence that the glaciers left behind, where we can track that retreat for about the last 200 years. And we can say with confidence that in the last decade, that rate has increased.
Terminus mapping is a great way to map a small portion of the ice field. We come out twice a year and we use a GPS to walk the edge of the terminus and map the farthest extent of Exit Glacier. And that allows us to see what type of changes are occurring over the winter accumulation period and the summer ablation period. With that data, that can help us as we witness these changes within the ice field, we can hopefully be able to correlate that with the weather data that we have.
You know, when you look at an ice field that's 750 square miles, when you look at a glacier that towers hundreds of feet high, you get a sense of permanence. You think these things are massive, they're somehow a permanent sort of feature, and yet in a very short period of time, in a matter of a couple of decades, we've seen dramatic change in those things.
At Exit Glacier, we have a time-lapse camera set up on the glacier that allows us to take a couple photos every single day, and then to put that sequence of photos into a video where we can see changes of the glacier and the vegetation phenology throughout an entire year.
Virtually all the glaciers in Alaska are receding. Some glaciers are moving forward. That's not an indication that they're actually growing in size. It's just the rate at which they're slipping down the mountain.
In some cases, some of these glaciers are receding back up onto land, and so they're producing less ice. When you change the glacier systems, you're changing habitat for marine mammals and other wildlife. And the populations of harbor seals have dropped dramatically in the fjords. In 1980, shortly after the establishment of the park, in Ayalak Bay, we had maybe 1,500 harbor seals. Nowadays, you know, it's a few hundred.
In Arctic environments, much of the sunlight that reaches the Earth bounces back because it hits snow and reflects off into space, or ice on the ocean and reflects off into space. That's the albedo effect. When the snow thaws and instead you have rock or vegetation, or when the ice thaws and you have transparent ocean, the sunlight will convert to other wavelengths. It'll convert essentially to warmth. That does not bounce back into the atmosphere as much. So consequently, you get a warming of the ocean, you get a warming of the ground, you get a thawing of frozen soils or permafrost, you get a more rapid thawing of sea ice. So once the ice and once the snow is off of the surface, the rate of warming increases considerably.
If you're driving out to Exit Glacier, you'll actually start to see signs along the side of the road that have dates on them. Visitors sometimes are confused. They think they're elevations or something until they get up to the glacier and realize, oh, those were all date signs along the road that were telling me when the glacier was there. Another thing that's been happening in the Exit Glacier area in recent years is this flooding that comes at a time we're not used to. We're used to having maybe some flooding in the fall when we have a lot of heavy rain. This has suddenly been some flooding that's coming in the middle of the summer, usually not associated with precipitation events. It's associated with warmer weather and melting. When you walk down one of our trails that leads to Exit Glacier, there are a number of ways to get out there, but what used to be the main route is no longer really the main route because of the way the glacier has changed. So this main route to the glacier used to provide dramatic views of the glacier as you walk towards it. In fact, there was a large kiosk built at the end of this trail for people to stop and rest and enjoy the view of the glacier. Now, if they stop and rest at this kiosk, people think, why did the park put a kiosk here? Because it looks out at some shrubs. And there's no glacier within view anymore.
The way we solve big problems like this is not all at once. There's a thing called the Sokolov's wedges, and you just take a little bite of the pie, one sliver at a time. So we try to do incremental changes.
When we talk to people about our concerns about climate change, about the changes that are happening to the glacier, we also want to leave them with some idea of what we're doing to mitigate some of the effects of climate change. For example, here at the park, as we retire vehicles out of our fleet, we try to replace them with electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles. We've done things like at the AKwx Nature Center, helping to sort of experiment and install a cutting-edge fuel cell, as opposed to running some traditional power source out there that relies on some sort of more greenhouse-producing gas.
My main hope for the future is that people get the message that the planet is changing fairly rapidly in places, particularly places like Kenai Fjords National Park, and that it is, we think, there's good evidence it's a result of atmospheric changes, which are measured in terms of human inputs into the atmosphere.
The rapid rate at which these glaciers are changing now offers us the opportunity to talk about this place as a way of looking into the future. In a lot of parts of the country, climate change issues are a little more subtle. And we can point here and say, look how fast this is changing. This is what the future holds for perhaps a lot of us and a lot of the planet as climate continues to change.
I'm optimistic that people and nature will adapt to change, but my expectation is that change will occur. Time will tell.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Looking at the coastal water forecast along the coast of the Panhandle, not too bad down on the south coast. East-southeast wind 10 to 15 knots, seas just under 8 feet. For the north coast, southeast winds at 20 knots with 8-foot seas. Small craft advisories for Lynn Canal, north winds 30 knots. Small crafts also for Stevens Passage, north winds 25 knots. Clarence Strait looking at a southeast breeze at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. And the outlook for Friday, Clarence Strait, small craft advisory, southeast winds 25 knots. Same thing for the south coast of the Panhandle. Central coast, kind of variable there. East-southeast 15 to 25 knots on the north coast. And then from about Sitka down to Port Alexander, north 25 knots. Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, north at 20. Stevens Passage, southeast at 20 knots with 4-foot seas. Prince William Sound, small craft advisories tomorrow. East winds 25 knots, seas at about 4 feet. Small craft advisories also for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Southeast 25 knots. Western North Gulf Coast, east at 20. Southeast 20 for the Barren Islands. And small craft advisories, southern Cook Inlet and Kamishak Bay. East-northeast winds there, 30 knots, seas 11 feet. North winds 20 knots, northern Cook Inlet. Outlook for Friday, Cook Inlet, north to northeast 10 to 15 knots. Light north winds at 10 knots for Prince William Sound. North 20 knots around Middleton Island. Western North Gulf Coast, northwest at 15. Barren Islands, west 20. Kamishak Bay, northwest winds 20 knots, seas 5 feet. For Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait looking at an east wind tomorrow at 20 knots, but small craft advisories on the east side of the island there. South winds 25 knots, seas just under 10 feet. And then behind the front, west 25 knots from Sitkinak to Castle Cape. Alaska Peninsula, west winds 20 knots, seas 10 feet. Bristol Bay, light southwest breeze at 15 knots. And look for 30-knot winds from the southwest from Bristol Bay on Friday. Otherwise, Kodiak Island, small craft advisories, west winds 25 to 30 knots with 30-knot west winds all the way down to Castle Cape. Alaska Peninsula, gale warnings on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula for southwest winds 40 knots, 17-foot seas. Southwest 30 knots on the Pacific side. Storm warnings for the western Aleutians tomorrow. West winds from Shemya to Kiska, 50 knots, 21-foot seas. Gale warnings for Amchitka Island, southwest at 40 knots. Minimum gales for Adak and Atka, south winds 35 knots. Small craft advisories for Unmak Island. Southwest winds 25 to 30 knots on Alaska Island. Lighter winds there, west 20 to 25 knots. Outlook for Friday. Storm warnings a little more prevalent out west there and advancing eastward. We've got from Shemya to Kiska, south winds 50 knots. Amchitka, 55 knots southwest winds. And 45 to 50 knot winds for Adak and Atka from a southwesterly direction. Seas 15 to 18 feet there. Gale warnings for the Fox Islands. South to southwest winds 30 to 40 knots with seas 13 to 18 feet. Southwest coast, Yukon Delta coast. South 20 knots, southeast 25 for St. Lawrence Island, and east 25 for Norton Sound, west 25 for St. Matthew Island. Pribilofs, west winds at 20 knots with 14-foot seas. And for Friday, big increase in the winds there, just under storm force for the Kuskokwim Delta coastline, 45 knot southwest winds blowing into Kuskokwim Bay, and 40 knot southwest winds with 21-foot seas for the Pribilofs. West winds 40 knots. For the St. Matthew Island area, turn southwest at 40 knots for the Yukon Delta coast. Southeast winds 30 knots for both Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Island. Up along the central eastern Arctic coast, brisk wind advisories for east winds sustained at 30 knots. Gale warnings for the western Arctic coast, east winds 35 knots. And brisk wind advisories from Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson for east winds at 30 knots. And then back to the gales from Cape Thompson to Wales, east winds 35 knots. Outlook for Friday, winds come down. Brisk wind advisories for the entire stretch of the Arctic coastline from Cape Beaufort to Demarcation Point. East winds 25 knots. Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, east at 20. And then from Wales up to Point Hope, southeast 25 knots. For tonight, blizzard warning tonight into tomorrow for the western Arctic coast and until midnight for St. Lawrence Island, 65-mile-an-hour wind gusts, whiteout conditions. And winter weather advisories for the western interior from Bristol Bay up to the interior valley south of the Brooks Range as temperatures warm, but still pretty chilly to start over the eastern interior. Cold and dry for the Panhandle with gusty winds in the north. Rain and snow showers for the Aleutians and the Bering Sea.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.